This episode of GunBlog VarietyCast brought to you by lawofselfdefense.com. Go to lawofselfdefense.com/variety to learn about your state's self-defense laws. Sign up for one of their online or in-person seminars or buy the book Law of Self-Defense and get 10% off when you use the discount code VARIETY at checkout. That's lawofselfdefense.com/variety. Sit back, relax, and take a ride with us on the GunBlog VarietyCast, episode 86. Welcome back to the GunBlog VarietyCast. I'm Sean, and I'm joined as always by Adam. How are you doing, Adam?
Well, my ball joints are frozen.
Isn't it, kind of warm out now?
Well, it was like 40 degrees today.
This is kind of a family podcast, dude.
Ball joints for my car.
You've got a boy car?
Your car has ball joints, too.
I've never gotten that close to my car to tell.
Oh, well.
What are ball joints?
Ball joints are for your front steering, and they reduce the vibration between the road and your axle shafts.
Okay. Swoosh, right over my head. Okay. Well, let's get started with the Tactical Dog and Fitness Report. 26.6 dog walking miles. And I skipped the spin class today because we closed on the new house.
Yay!
The wife and I are now part owners, along with the bank, in a brand new house. For those who care, we're moving out of Garner, which is just south of Raleigh, and we're moving east to Zebulon. I'm not really sure if that's Zebulon or Zebulon, but we're east of it, whatever it is. If you do a Google map search for Carolina Mudcat Stadium, we're just a bit south of that. And tomorrow, we're going to go out and do a little meet and greet with a possible second dog. We'll see how that goes.
You want a second dog?
Yeah, the wife wants to adopt another dog now that we have our own house, and we're going to have a very expensive fence on our backyard, so we can have a dog, whatever kind of dog we want now. So
you're going to get a Maligator? Or are you going to get a Dutch?
No.
What are you looking for?
Well, the wife would like an American Staffordshire Terrier, which is kind of like a big pit bull, or a Rottweiler, like she used to have.
Go big or go home.
Yeah, pretty much. Any idea where we can get a Rottweiler?
Well, the only guy I know who sells Rottweilers, they're like, 4 and 5 figure Rottweilers.
Oh, sure. Could build another fence for that.
Could build a garage for that. So I spent most of today, actually all of today, trying to replace my passenger side ball joints. Unsuccessfully, I might add. To the point I'm pretty sure I broke the rental ball joint tool beyond repair. And then I had Oddball come and take me to the store to buy a new one, and I almost broke that one too.
Oh, man.
A ball joint removal tool is like a gigantic C-clamp, and I bent the first one. This is a hefty piece of machinery. So this was supposed to take like an hour, but as the wife says, Jeep time is real time times 3. So if you think something's going to take 15 minutes, it actually takes 45 minutes. If you think it's going to take 2 hours, it actually takes 6. Oh, I thought this was going to take an hour, and 9 hours later, I'm still not really anywhere close to being finished. So I have a friend who's coming to help me tomorrow. He's kind of done this thing before, but these things are so stuck that I might have to have it towed somewhere, which will be an interesting experience since it has no front wheels right now.
Yeah, that might make it difficult.
Yeah.
Well, and now it's time for Blue Collar Prepping with that bratty kid sister of the gun blogosphere, Erin Paulette. This week, Erin explains what Groupness is and why it's relevant to preppers.
Come on, every pony! It's time for Blue Collar Prepping with Erin Paulette!
Erin, 2 weeks ago you talked about the monkey sphere, and then you mentioned it was related to Groupness. How are the two connected?
Well, as a refresher for our listeners, the monkey sphere is the number of active relationships humans can sustain at any one time. Anyone within that number is someone we care about and is effectively part of our tribe, and anyone outside that number is, at best, someone we don't care about and, at worst, is regarded as competition for scarce resources. It therefore follows that we find ways to relate to those people within our monkey sphere, and we do that in a manner known as groupness. The term was coined by social psychologist Henri Teifel, and it states that various animals, including humans, form in-groups with common characteristics. And among humans, these characteristics are 1. People within the group share common rituals and norms. This means that there is a shared sense of what is allowed within the group and what is not, and that there are some tasks which everyone does, and some tasks which fall to certain people like elders. 2. A common understanding of history and purpose. The group has been together long enough to have shared stories or in-jokes that outsiders are not privy to or wouldn't understand, and everyone within the group shares a common ideal. And 3. The ability of members to sustain the group through challenges. And not only does this mean group effectiveness in overcoming obstacles, but it also means that the group pulls together under stress and members look out for one another. As an example, let's examine the groupness of gun owners. We all own guns and many of us carry. That's our norm. When we see unsafe gun handling, we correct it, or if it's in media, we ridicule it. That's one of our common rituals. Some of us are very vocal about fighting anti-gun activists. Hi, weird. But we leave that task to those of us who are eloquent, responsible, and have some degree of respect within the group. Our common purpose is, of course, to fight against gun control and to advance the cause of gun rights. We have a common history. We make jokes about being zumboed and use lingo like fun show and keep your booger hook off the bang switch. And our ability to sustain the group through challenges and overcome these challenges can be seen in how we dealt with the assault weapons ban of '94, how we pull together when our rights are under attack like they were in New York and Colorado, and the general advancement of gun rights over the past several years.
It sounds to me like groupness is a great thing, Aaron.
Well, it is and it isn't. Groupness can accomplish a lot, but it comes at the risk of becoming insular. It's all too easy for members to stop listening to anyone not within their group, and an echo chamber emerges where challenging thought isn't permitted. As Lawrence Gonzalez said, when the in-group encounters individuals from outside the group, the default response is hostility. People protect their group from outsiders and from outside influences. If a group invests a lot of effort in a goal and succeeds, its boundaries become stronger, and it tends to become even more hostile to outside influences. This may not be overt hostility. It may simply be a subtle and unconscious tendency to reject anything from another group." End quote. And Sean, we gun owners see this a lot as well. Some of us make it difficult for new members to join, or for new modes of thought to be accepted. Just see the controversy regarding open carry for an example of that. In worst-case situations, an entire culture develops around not allowing dissenting thought or not challenging the elders, and this becomes groupthink, which is very bad. As an example, consider NASA in the 80s. They had put a man on the moon multiple times, and so they weren't open to any suggestion that how they were operating the space shuttle was dangerous. The thinking was, don't tell us how to do our job. We know what we're doing. And this culture became so pervasive that even though there were multiple failures within a launch, these were defined as acceptable simply because the launch was successful. In other words, groupthink from groupness blinded them to hazards until something happened that they couldn't ignore, the explosion of Space Shuttle Challenger in 1986. So, in other words, groupness, bolstered by a few lucky victories, can blur the line between actual success in achieving a goal sensibly and a close call that, fortunately, didn't turn into disaster.
But how does this apply to prepping?
Preppers need to understand how groupness works and must be able to recognize the signs of isolation and groupthink when they appear. This is important because preppers already form into circles, groups, or tribes of like-minded people, groupness in action, and so when disaster strikes, they need to be wary that they do not fall into the trap of groupthink. Additionally, they need to realize that post-disaster, other people will form their own groups as well, and will likely regard those preppers with the same hostility and otherness. And finally, preppers need to realize that just because they got away with something doesn't mean that it was a good idea. Additionally, just because something worked in the past doesn't mean it will continue to work in the future. For more information on groupness in a survival situation, I encourage listeners to read the 3-page PDF titled Groupthink in Outdoor Adventure Settings. It's linked in the show notes.
All right, Aaron. It was good to talk with you. I'll see you again next week.
See you next week, Sean.
If you'd like to read more from Erin, check out her blog, lurkingrhythmically.blogspot.com.
Felons behaving badly. NC man sought after stabbing girlfriend, causing collapsed lung, police say. Dateline, Fayetteville, North Carolina. Police in Fayetteville are looking for a man who they say stabbed his girlfriend, causing several injuries to her, including a collapsed lung. The incident happened earlier in the day on Friday, but was reported about 8:45 p.m. Friday in the 2000 block of Progress Street, Fayetteville police said. The preliminary investigation revealed that the stabbing victim, age 31, of the 340 block of Coates Road in Linden, and suspect, age 35, of the 2600 block of Melwood Drive, who are boyfriend and girlfriend, were involved in an argument when suspect stabbed her, the police said in a press release. The incident occurred earlier in the day Friday at the Red Roof Inn located at 3136 Bordeaux Park Drive.
Stop by and say hi.
At about 1 p.m., police said. The woman was transported to Cape Fear Valley Medical Center with several stab wounds in her shoulders and chest, one of which caused a collapsed lung, police said. Detectives at the Fayetteville Police Department's aggravated assault unit have obtained warrants on suspect for attempted first-degree murder and assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill, inflicting serious injury. Detectives are seeking the public's assistance with locating suspect.
So I have a question.
Okay.
So she has a place of residence, and he has a place of residence, and they're in their 30s, yet they were at a Red Roof Inn at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
So what sort of person do you figure has his girlfriend 30 minutes from her house in a Red Roof Inn, not at his house, in the middle of the day in Fayetteville, and gets into an altercation with her, stabs her several times in the shoulders and chest, causing a collapsed lung? Fine, upstanding citizens, you figure?
Nice folks.
Driver's license revoked, misdemeanor class 3. Wanton injury to persons of property greater than $200, misdemeanor class 1. Assault on a female, misdemeanor class A1.
We have a pattern.
Big shocker. Obtain controlled substance by fraud, felon class I. Possession with intent to sell or distribute counterfeit controlled substance, felon class I. Assault by strangulation, felon class H. And if you didn't know, assault by strangulation generally goes together with assault on a female. It's the first felony that they can get you for beating up your girlfriend when you grab her around the neck.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's generally the first felony they can get you for on a domestic. If you punch her a good one, that's a class A1 misdemeanor. But if you grab her by the neck and choke her one, that's a class H felony. Common law robbery, felon class G, and assault with a deadly weapon, inflicting serious injury, felon class E.
Leopards, spots, some assembly required.
No assembly required. They're stuck pretty tight. Nikki tries to get away from the Donald, but his comments about NATO allies not doing anything drags her back. So what is the truth about NATO? And what is Trumpian fantasy? Nikki, I know you're getting a little tired of examining the foreign policy views of this year's presidential candidates, so maybe we should talk about something different. Recently, the United States deployed 12 F-15C Eagles and approximately 350 airmen to Iceland and the Netherlands as a show of commitment to a free and secure Europe. We discussed why we may or may not want to continue being part of NATO more than a year ago. Has anything changed?
Yeah, a little bit. As much as this year's presidential primaries are giving me a foreign policy headache, it's unfortunate that Donald Trump, or the hairy hemorrhoid as I like to call him, has once again stepped on his own winky and brought this topic back into the spotlight. So even though we don't want to discuss the presidential candidate's foreign policy, we're going to wind up discussing the presidential candidate's foreign policy. So despite what the Donald may think about Putin being his buddy and pal, Putin is far from it. He's a calculating, cunning, aggressive authoritarian leader whose sole purpose is to restore Russia to her former glory. And he's doing that using both overt aggression and subversive soft power methods to achieve those goals. In light of Russia's overt aggression, our NATO association seems more relevant than ever. And while it's true that the United States does provide the bulk of the common protection that NATO offers, and is one of only about 5 nations who meet the NATO benchmark of 2% of GDP for defense spending, and while it's also true that other NATO allies need to increase their defense budgets to meet that benchmark, That does not mean that our participation is not worth it or that they're not doing anything, as Trump claims.
So what do other nations do?
Well, for instance, the Baltic Air Policing Mission. The mission is meant to protect the skies over Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia from the Russians. Responsibility for the mission was transferred from Hungary and Germany to Spain and Belgium this January, demonstrating NATO's enduring solidarity with its Baltic allies. Europeans rotate leading that mission, and Spain is leading the first 4 months of 2016. Also this year, NATO is preparing to join the fight against ISIS. After the attacks in Paris, Brussels, and Ankara, it's hard to imagine a more common threat, even though, given Putin's actions in Ukraine, that threat is pretty much big justification for NATO's existence in and of itself. And by the way, NATO already has an informal coalition fighting ISIS, and several of its members already contribute. While NATO was created to counter the USSR threat, today the allies face more threats than ever, and it's not just from a resurgent Russia. Oh, and by the way, Trump's pathological fear of those Syrian refugees and the basis of his campaign stopping potential terrorists from entering our country, NATO is actually doing something about that very problem in Europe. The UK, Canada, Turkey, Germany, and Greece are running that mission, and no, the United States is not providing its resources there. NATO forces are intercepting and returning people trying to reach Europe from Turkey.
So how much are we spending on NATO? Is Trump right that we can't afford it? That we are spending billions and billions or something?
Or something. So NATO has both direct and indirect funding. When the North Atlantic Council unanimously decides to engage in an operation, there's absolutely no obligation for each and every country to contribute to the operation unless it's like an Article 5 collective defense operation, in which case the expectations are a bit different. Contributions are voluntary, and they vary in form and scale from, for instance, a few soldiers to thousands of troops, and from armored vehicles, naval vessels, or helicopters to all forms of equipment or support like medical and stuff like that. Yes, there's a 2% of GDP defense budget benchmark, and each nation should follow it. We spend more on defense than all of the other allies because we're the biggest country in NATO. So even if we spent only 2% of our GDP on defense, we would still be spending more than pretty much all the other allies combined. So when I say the United States defense spending comprises 73% of the alliance as a whole, that doesn't actually mean that the United States pays for 73% of all NATO missions. That's not how it works. As I mentioned earlier, some NATO missions we don't even contribute to at all.
So basically what you're saying is Trump is full of BS again.
Lots and lots and lots of excrement, yes. That's kind of undeniable, given the fact that he really has no clue what he's talking about when it comes to NATO or pretty much anything else, and has no comprehension of the threats that we face today. He yammers on about nuclear something, but he doesn't understand the details of our participation in NATO. That said, he's correct when he says that other NATO allies need to bump up their defense spending and start contributing more to the alliance. This is something Robert Gates said very clearly when he left the post of Secretary of Defense, and that fact hasn't changed. Only 5 of the NATO allies today spend 2% or more of their GDP on national defense, so they do need to do better.
All right, Nikki, it was good to talk with you. I'll see you again next week.
You bet. Take care.
Nikki blogs at thelibertyzone.com.
Plug of the week, the Safety Solutions Academy podcast. I know we talked about the Safety Solutions Academy podcast previously, and may have been last week or the week before. We talked about just one particular podcast. So this week I was talking to Luke from Triangle Tactical Podcast, which you should be listening to, and he came over to have a look at my computer. I've been running this new computer since Christmas, and I was recommending to him that he should pick up this computer and use it for Triangle Tactical. Luke was starting to drive away, and I stopped him and I says, "Hey, are you listening to Safety Solutions Academy podcast?" "Nah, I used to," he says, "but not since Paul started it back up." Well, you should be, because Paul is killing it. He's doing about 3 shows a week, 2 really short ones and 1 a longer interview show, and they're all good. You should be subscribed to the Safety Solutions Academy podcast. And while you're at it, check out his satire video, Ring of Fire Clean. That's clean spelled Kleen. Even if you don't know what it's about, it's funny. My wife even laughed at it. And if you know what it's about, it's hilarious. So check it out, the Safety Solutions Academy podcast. There's a link in the show notes, but you can find it on iTunes and maybe Stitcher Radio, but definitely iTunes. Beth was almost unable to join us this week, but at the last minute, she managed to bring us an interview with Katie about the upcoming USCCA Concealed Carry Expo in Atlanta, Georgia. Take it away, Beth.
Thanks, Sean. I'm actually up here in beautiful West Bend, Wisconsin at the United States Concealed Carry Headquarters. And I'm doing a little work here with everybody because we are really getting geared up and excited for the upcoming Concealed Carry Expo. This will be the second year that this wonderful event will take place, and I have a person with all the juicy details, so I'm going to let her tell us all about it. So, Katie, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what we have to look forward to in the next couple weeks.
Well, it's coming up quickly. We have the United States Concealed Carry Association Concealed Carry Expo taking place at the Georgia International Convention Center at the end of April 29th through May 1st. We have some really interesting guest speakers coming, some excellent trainers, and of course, some of our top industry partners.
Well, and I guess for those who are listening to the Pacifiers and Peacemakers segment here, they're probably mostly ladies. So can you tell us anything about the events that are specifically geared toward women? What are they going to want to see and do while they're there?
We've come up with quite a few interesting things for women at the show. I know it's kind of the biggest growing segment of our industry right now, so we definitely want to keep the ladies happy. We have a concealed carry fashion show on Friday night. Now, it's not just for women, but certainly there's a lot of products in there that women would be interested in.
Well, and how do people get involved with that? How would they sign up to come see the fashion show?
Oh, you have to buy tickets in advance because it's going to sell out. We're already halfway through our max capacity. You'll have to visit concealedcarryexpo.com. And then you can click on Get Tickets, and it'll bring you to the fashion show page, and you can pre-register right there. They're $25 a person.
And that's Saturday evening?
Saturday evening at 6 o'clock.
Okay, and what else do we have specifically for the ladies?
Well, we have a very, very interesting panel discussion planned for Sunday morning at 11:45. It's going to be led by the lovely Beth Alcazar here, and we're going to have some very influential women in the industry participating as well. We'll be taking questions from the audience and questions from a few other places online and social media as well.
What are some of the topics you think? I mean, what is the point of the panel? What are we trying to accomplish with that this year?
Well, you know, a lot of women are, like we mentioned, it is a growing segment of the industry, and a lot of people are just beginners. You know, they want to carry, they don't know what to buy, and they're sick of listening to whatever their husband's trying to tell them about it. Sometimes this panel setting really makes for a good discussion, and we can get a lot of questions answered all together.
So it's a great opportunity to just have that open dialogue, that honest feedback with women who have either done it or they're experiencing it or...
Yeah, anything. Awesome. I mean, the training, the gear, the clothing. I mean, a lot of people tend to have an issue carrying every day because they don't want to plan their outfit around it. Every woman out there has the same problems, and it's great to sit down and talk about it.
Hopefully we can debunk some of the myths about dressing to the gun.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. And what else? I hear there's talk of something maybe happening Saturday morning?
Yes, Saturday morning we're also having a women's mixer breakfast. We'll have all of our panelists for the panel discussion on Sunday there, taking your questions for the panel in advance. And it'll be a great opportunity for you to get to meet and talk with some of the most influential women in the industry today.
So it's just kind of a Q&A or meet and greet, or how would you?
Just a meet and greet, Q&A. We'll have some coffee and some pastries. It'll be a great way to kick off the day, especially as you're going in to check out everything at the show.
Oh, that's wonderful. And that's just for women only?
Just for women.
But the other activities are open for everyone, correct?
Everyone, yep.
Okay, and I guess, for those who are interested, you can come out and see all of us. I will also be presenting what is kind of an interesting topic. It's why women hate guns. And really the whole point of that is I'm trying to encourage women to accept, own, use, and carry firearms, and hopefully taking the opportunity to use that presentation to really focus on some of those myths and some of those issues that a lot of women face about why they're told by the media or even told by family members or told because of their gender that they're not really supposed to have firearms, to train with firearms or otherwise. So definitely want to encourage people to come out and see that. That actually happens on Saturday around 4:15. So for all those who are going to be in the Atlanta area or around the Atlanta area, this is going to be a real exciting time for everyone who's interested in concealed carry, but especially this year focusing in on women. So I hope to see a lot of ladies out there. Thanks again, Katie, for your time. It was great to be up here in West Bend.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and we're glad to have you here.
Absolutely. Y'all gave me a little bit of snow to enjoy while I was here.
Oh, we love the snow.
And it'll be a completely different change when we head down to warm Atlanta, Georgia. So hopefully we'll see all of you guys there. And thanks again, Sean. You guys stay safe and be well armed.
You can read more from Beth at usconcealedcarry.com/blog and click on Pacifiers and Peacemakers in the left sidebar.
Fun with headlines.
So this one isn't so much an inaccurate headline as it is sort of misleading, but not, I don't really know how to describe it. It's kind of a missing the point headline. Parents of baby who had all of his diapers searched sue feds. Subheading, craziness of the case is proportional to the craziness of the government's conduct. Now, Sean, when you hear that headline and you hear that subhead, what do you think happened?
I'm imagining that they were taking their baby on board an airplane, and the baby had his diaper searched because if I was trying to sneak explosives on board a plane, I'd shove it down the baby's diaper. That'd be a great place to put it because who would think to stick their hands down a dirty diaper looking for explosives, right? And you could certainly put enough C4 down a baby diaper that you could blow a hole in the plane.
Well, that's not immediately what I thought of when I read that, but that's certainly a good guess.
Right? And see, that's what I would do. Try to think like a terrorist, right? I would start stuffing things in places where people would be unlikely to look for them because of their emotional blind spots or their unwillingness to cross social boundaries. And then I would attack them for crossing those boundaries. Like, oh, why are you looking at my baby's diaper?
There you go. Well, as it turns out, this 7-month-old's name was on the known or suspected terrorist list that the TSA keeps.
So he can't buy a gun in certain states.
Right.
I mean, aside from the fact that he's not old enough to buy a gun.
Right. So 7 months old and on a known or suspected terrorist list that gets him searched every single time he goes to the airport. And when they say they searched his diapers, they mean each individual diaper was searched for hidden, explosives or, maybe he had a gun in there. But they weren't concerned with the parents. They were concerned with the baby. So there's that. So the headline really should be, the TSA is full of morons.
I'm not sure I would say that the TSA is full of morons. First, because it doesn't make a lot of sense to continue to state the obvious. But mostly because what you really want to say here is that the TSA is filled with people who will follow a rule no matter how dumb that rule is. And that's not necessarily a trait of a moron. That's the trait of an obnoxious rule-following idiot, a bureaucrat.
Also very true. And for a very long time, I've had the theory that the smaller your sphere of influence, the more draconian you are about enforcing its rules.
That is true.
Like homeowners associations.
There are two kinds of people in the world. There are the people who feel that they get power by withholding things from you, and the people that feel that they get power by providing things to you. Oh, let me get things for you that you couldn't ordinarily get. Oh, let me help you achieve what you want to achieve. And they feel more powerful because they help other people along. And then there's people who enjoy the feeling of power by taking away from people. Oh, I'm going to stop you from doing something. And a lot of those people who like to stop people from doing things end up, filling up your baby's diaper at the TSA checkpoint.
Yay.
Well, you know what? If you had somebody who was on the terror watch list, you'd check everything in his bag too.
Except if he's 7 months old, he's obviously not the person that they meant. He's 7 months old. Come on, he doesn't even talk yet. He doesn't walk. He probably crawls.
These terrorists, They're masters of disguise.
They're crafty, is what you're saying?
They're crafty. You never know what they're going to do.
Oh, man.
I mean, they've got these terrorists in the Middle East. They could put on that burqa. They look like they're wearing a burqa.
Because they're wearing a burqa.
Yeah, they could be women. They could be terrorists. Why couldn't they look like a 7-month-old baby?
There's physics involved there.
You're saying conservation of mass applies?
Yes.
I don't know. Well, have you ever wondered how batteries work? Have you ever wondered what's the difference between a NiCad and a nickel metal hydride and all these other kinds of weird batteries? I asked Silicon Graybeard about batteries, and wouldn't you know it, he had a very long answer. In Tech Tips, Tech Tips, Tech Tips.
You are damaging my calm.
Tech Tips with Silicon Graybeard. Well, hey, Sig, I understand we're going to talk about batteries.
Right, the care and feeding of your batteries. Chances are that over the years, you've gotten a bunch of different kinds of rechargeable batteries, from the old standard lead-acid batteries and some power tools, nickel-cadmium or NiCad batteries, nickel metal hydride, I'm going to call those nickel hydride, or lithium batteries like a lithium polymer or a LiPo. The problem with this range of batteries is that they all require different charging methods and strategies. Even worse, you might find you need different chargers depending on the size of the battery you're charging. All rechargeable batteries discharge when they're not being used, and that's called self-discharge. Some are worse than others at this. It means you need to pay attention to keeping batteries maintained so that they're working when you need them. Lead-acid batteries are the most common. It's one of the oldest chemistries for a battery that's in production, so there's more of them on the market, typically as a sealed lead-acid or gel cell. You probably think of these as a car starting battery, but if you have a battery backup for your computer or other stuff, there's most likely a gel cell in it. Most solar power systems rely on lead-acid batteries. The newest type of lead-acid batteries, absorbent glass mat or AGM batteries, suspend the acid electrolyte in a specially designed fiberglass mat, which makes the battery spill-proof. AGM offers several advantages, including faster charging and instant high current on demand, while offering good performance at a deep discharge cycle. Think of them as a good all-around battery. The downside is that, like all sealed units, AGM batteries are sensitive to overcharging. These batteries can be charged to 2.4 volts per cell and higher without problems. However, the float charge should be reduced to between 2.25 and 2.3 volts per cell. Lead-acid batteries are relatively easy to charge, but they don't tolerate fast charging. Slow and gentle is the key, although what exactly constitutes gentle is up for debate. A charging voltage of 2.3 to 2.35 volts per cell gives the longest service life, but the capacity in amp hours can go down with charging cycles due to sulfation. That's a buildup of crystals from the sulfuric acid they contain. Stepping the charge voltage up to 2.40 to 2.45 volts per cell results in better capacity, but can lead to corrosion and dry out the electrolyte. Sealed batteries are susceptible to drying out because you can't add more water. So it's wise to keep the charging voltage down closer to that 2.4 volts per cell. That's 14.4 volts for a standard 12-volt battery. Right now, you might be saying cells. If you have or remember car batteries that require water, each cell had a cap. There are 6 cells in a standard 12-volt battery. So when you say 2.4 volts per cell, that's times 6. If you're using lead-acid batteries for power backup, don't go get a cheap single-setting charger. Those are fine for getting a car starting battery recharged if it's dead, but not for maintaining a critical backup battery. Consider a smart charger for your lead-acid batteries, like the one made by Schumacher that's in the show notes. This one has separate charge cycles for conventional starting batteries, gel cells, and AGM. This is a rugged charger, and it'll deliver 15 amps in that constant voltage, constant current mode for charging a starting battery that's in need of a fast charge. But I prefer the slower charging cycle, which is current limited at 2 amps. This charger offers 3 rates, the fast, regular, and maintain. It's intended to be hooked up to a boat or RV and left for long periods, so it measures the battery state continually and turns on the trickle charge when it's needed. After lead-acid batteries, NiCad batteries are probably the most common. Both gel cells and NiCads have been used in power tools, but most tools are moving to lithium chemistry now. NiCad batteries were especially common in radio and other electronics, but as the awareness of the toxicity of cadmium started to rise, the industry began looking for replacements, eventually developing better ways of producing nickel metal hydride batteries. Note that the batteries aren't toxic to the users, but the metal processing facilities produce toxic waste. Nickel hydride has largely taken over the market segment from NiCads now, filling the niche for smaller batteries than most lead acid, and can be dropped in the place of a dry cell, an alkaline battery in most applications. A nickel hydride AA cell can replace a AA alkaline in almost any application, although the nickel hydride has a lower initial voltage, 1.2 versus 1.5 volts in the alkaline. In applications where that voltage is more critical, maybe in a string of batteries where the lower cell voltage adds up to a substantially lower voltage than the string of alkaline batteries, it may not be a good substitution. On the other hand, the nickel hydride battery is rechargeable 500 or 600 times, so while it costs more than the alkaline, your total cost may not be that bad. And let me note that many things affect the number of charges you can get out of a battery. Another area where the nickel hydride is not a good choice is in something that sits around not getting used. Nickel hydride's higher self-discharge rate than an alkaline will empty the battery within several months, while alkalines can sit for years. You know that flashlight that you want to work the one time you need it? Use alkalines. In terms of capacity, nickel hydride and alkalines are very similar, but capacity is a funny number. You've undoubtedly seen batteries rated at some number of amp hours or milliamp hours, perhaps 2,500 milliamp hours for a AA. That number is at a specific discharge rate, specifically 1/10 of the capacity. In this case, for this 2,500 milliamp hour battery, that only applies if you discharge the battery at 1/10 of 2,500 or 250 milliamps for 10 hours. Higher current normally leads to a shorter battery life, and it's not a simple relationship. That is, if you take twice as much current, the battery might not last half as long. Here's an example based on some tests that'll be in the show notes. Take a Duracell copper top AA battery. You've seen them for years. At a 100 milliamp discharge current, it shows 2,200 milliamp hours capacity. At a 1 amp discharge, it showed 830 milliamps. That's almost a third of the capacity at 100 milliamps. On the other end, they tested a PowerStream, that's a brand, 2,000 milliamp hour nickel hydride battery. At the 100 milliamp hour current, it showed slightly less capacity than the alkaline, the 2,000 versus 2,200 in the Duracell. At higher current, though, 2 amps, its capacity dropped much less than the Duracell, dropping only to 1,940 milliamp hours. That's 97% of the 0.1 amp rate. Furthermore, at a 5 amp discharge rate, its capacity actually went up compared to the 100 milliamp hour rate to 2,110 milliamp hours. To complicate this mess even more, although it had more capacity than the copper top when supplying 5 amps, its voltage went lower. A really voltage-sensitive application might turn itself off. Well, next time, we'll get into different types of batteries and get into some more details like this.
All right, Sig. It was good to talk with you. I'll see you again next week.
See you next time.
You can read more from Silicon Graybeard at thesilicongraybeard.blogspot.com. That's Graybeard spelled Graybeard, or email questions directly to sigraybeard, one word, @gmail.com.
The J Block. Hillary attacks the NRA. The Washington Free Beacon got some audio from a small private fundraiser for Hillary Clinton. At the fundraiser, Hillary said a few things that I think gun owners might like to hear.
I do not believe that the NRA represents most gun owners. They sure don't represent the majority of Americans. But they have so intimidated elected members of Congress and other legislative bodies that these people are passing the most absurd laws. The idea that you could have an open carry permit with an AK-47 over your shoulder walking up and down the aisles of a supermarket is just despicable. So I'm going to speak out. I'm going to do everything I can to rally people against this pernicious corrupting influence of the NRA. And we're going to do whatever we can. I was proud when my husband took them out, and we were able to ban assault weapons, but he had to put a sunset on. So 10 years later, of course, Bush wouldn't agree to reinstate them. We've got to go after this. And here again, the Supreme Court is wrong on the Second Amendment. And I am going to make that case every chance I get. So I will need your help on that.
So to recap, NRA does not represent most gun owners. Open carry permits, bad. AKs over your shoulders in supermarkets, despicable. Hillary, proud of the assault weapons ban. Supreme Court, wrong. Hillary, going to go after this every chance she gets.
Free Beacon writers in fear for their lives. You don't publish something bad about the Clintons. Bad things happen to you.
Yeah. They think the Free Beacon is pretty much staked out there. They're not a Democrat newspaper.
No, not really at all.
Quick question here, Adam. How exactly is it that the NRA intimidates elected officials? Do they wait in antechambers and beat up these elected officials with truncheons or something?
No. They have guns.
So they threaten these elected officials?
Sure.
To shoot them if they don't vote the way they're supposed to vote?
That's exactly what happens. I mean, you've been on Capitol Hill. You know that's exactly what happens.
Right.
Or wait, no, I'm sorry. That's what the left thinks happens. No, what actually happens is that the NRA actually does represent most gun owners, and we vote.
No, it can't be that. That's too simple.
It's probably the other thing.
I think what happens is they take all that NRA money and they get it in nickels and they put it in socks and they beat the elected officials with it. That's what really happens.
Perhaps. We'll never know.
Next question. How do I get one of these open carry permits so that I can carry an AK up and down the supermarket aisles on my shoulder? Apparently, Hillary thinks I need to have an open carry permit to do this. Last I checked, I didn't need a permit of any kind to do that in North Carolina. She doesn't get out much.
Well, you can't do that at all in Tennessee, even with a permit.
Oh, all right.
So I have the exact opposite case. Even if I had, well, I do have a carry permit, but I can't carry a rifle because it's a handgun carry permit.
You can't open carry?
I can open carry, but I have to have a handgun carry permit.
You can't open carry a rifle?
I can't open carry a rifle now.
Okay. Very strange.
It is very strange.
And now a word from our sponsor. You know what will happen. If you ever have to defend yourself, you're going to end up in handcuffs. Are you trained to win the fight after the fight? Sure, you can draw, aim, and put 2 in the 10 ring, but have you learned your legal self-defense? Do you know the law? Go to lawofselfdefense.com/variety to sign up for your legal self-defense class. Each class is tailored to the laws in your state. Attorney Andrew Branco will teach you the law. Not just what the law says, but what the judge's legal opinions say. What the jury instructions say. Sure, you could risk spending the rest of your life in prison because you followed the advice of some gun store counter jockey, or you could spend the day with the man who literally wrote the book on the law of self-defense. Carry a gun so you're hard to kill. Know the law so you're hard to convict. Go to lawofselfdefense.com/variety to sign up for a legal self-defense class in your state. And make sure to use discount code VARIETY at checkout to receive 10% off. So where can you take a live, in-person, state-specific law of self-defense seminar?
August 7th, 2016 in Raleigh at Triangle Shooting Academy.
August 13th in Sherwood, Oregon at Threat Dynamics.
August 20th at Nashville Armory in Nashville, Tennessee.
October 15th in Glendale, Arizona.
And October 16th in Las Cruces, New Mexico at the Butterfield Shooting Range.
Check lawofselfdefense.com for which states these classes cover and to see when more classes are offered. Or email him and ask him to teach a class in your area.
But most importantly, when you sign up, make sure to use discount code VARIETY at checkout to save 10%.
This podcast runs on your donations. Go to GunBlog VarietyCast.com and click on the donate or subscribe button in the right sidebar. You can make a one-time donation of any amount or subscribe for as little as $2 a month. That doesn't sound like much, but we pay our server costs monthly. A little help from you is a big help to us.
So Adam, did you see Cosmopolitan's women talk to their men about how guns are bad or something?
I saw that they did that, but I don't care, so I didn't actually watch it.
You don't care how much your woman hates that you have guns?
The only thing that my woman hates about my gun is that the suppressor on the end of our SBR is like 2 pounds, and she wants me to get one that's titanium.
Yeah, well, I understand. I understand. If you lived in North Carolina, I'd know exactly who to send you to. Don't know what to tell you about it in Tennessee. Well, of course, Weird saw that video.
Of course he did.
And he's got a number of things to say about it for another Weird Audio Fisk in This Week in Anti-Gun Nuttery. So hey, Weird, what do you got for me this week?
So Sean, you sent me this video, and when I saw it, I was tempted to pass. It's from that foundering magazine known as Cosmopolitan, with the title, Watch 4 Women Tell Their Boyfriends How They Really Feel About Their Guns. With the description, Cosmopolitan.com invited 4 women to confront their boyfriends about their gun ownership and discuss how they really feel about being in a home with 1 or more guns. I watched it, and my impression is, no they didn't. There's no way this isn't a theatrical production. The whole thing is shot in one of those seamless television studios with theatrical light. Everybody is heavily made up and dressed in what appears to my fashion-illiterate eye, designer clothes. By the way, I can tell this as any piece of clothing that both looks terrible and expensive is designer. The guys are all meek, insipid beta males. And the closest you get to what might pass for a shooter, rather than a central casting actor, is Alan. And he's probably the meekest and most soft-spoken amongst these pajama boys. But he appears to be wearing a compact Glock on his hip in a Blackhawk Serpa holster. A super common gun in a heavily marketed holster. Seems almost believable. But wait, what's that beside the holster? A badge? Something tells me this timid little flower wouldn't fare well as a cop. But maybe that's one of those novelty concealed carry badges. This is the shooting world's equivalent to the I'm with stupid t-shirt. Still, enough with what these fools look like. They sound even worse.
Do you have a license?
I do.
You do?
In Florida, you don't need one.
Oh, so
but
you don't have a license?
No.
So did you catch that? He interrupts her asking if he has a gun license, I assume to own, not to carry by his answer, with the, I don't need one, but quickly stops, likely because he went off script. But duh, there are only a few states where you need a license to own a gun. Many more you do need a license to carry. But if you don't carry, then who cares if you've got a permit or not? But it gets worse.
The guns that you shoot, are those registered?
Yes, absolutely. They're purchased 100% legal, registered. Everyone, Uncle Sam, everyone knows about it.
This is a common trope with politics in general. If your state or town has some weird law, you think the entire country is just like you. Same goes for guns. Cosmopolitan magazine is headquartered in New York City, one of the few places in America with a gun registry. Meanwhile, in Florida, where this couple claims to be from, you couldn't register your guns if you wanted to. Maybe he just thinks that since he filled out a 4473 at the local gun shop, his guns are registered with Uncle Sam. Please don't hurt me, Maggie! I think it's more likely following a script.
Guns in my house are kept under lock all the time.
You are incapable of opening said locks?
Well, you said if I came home drunk, the lock and the key to the lock and the guns are in 2 different places.
Who writes this crap? Of course he has access to his safe. And if you've been drinking, just don't play with your guns. Safes keep unauthorized users away from your guns, not the owners. Does anybody actually think this way?
If we get into an argument or whatever, are you ever nervous that things could get out of hand?
This is Alan, who I talked about before, who is easily the most sheepish of the bunch. No, Alan. Nobody thinks you even raise your voice to your girlfriend. And if you did, she probably wouldn't notice. Also, she easily outweighs this guy. And I'm not calling her fat. I'm just saying my shadow weighs more than noodle arms here.
From a non-American point of view, I think that Americans are used to the culture of like freedom of speech.
Well, I mean, it's written into the Constitution.
Was that even English? Still, if you don't like American culture, leave. Or accept it, because you aren't going to change the mind of everybody else.
It's just this extremely powerful death machine.
I'm just going to keep going back to this whole car thing. You're driving down a highway and the tire bursts.
Right, but those have an ulterior
cars have an ulterior use rather than cars
That's
are
true.
used to get from A to B. What is the ulterior use for guns?
And this was Cosmo's money clip. They even made a GIF for this article with Maggie saying, "Death machine." I'm sorry, all this shows us how stupid and inarticulate Maggie is. Yes, guns are designed to kill. And I'm going to talk about people rather than animals. In every nation on the planet, killing other people is completely legal if that person is posing an immediate threat to your life or the lives of others around you. A lot of progressive nations make it really difficult to actually exercise this, but it doesn't change that if somebody is trying to murder or rape you, you can legally end their life to stop the attack. Wouldn't you rather do that with a gun than your bare hands? Hell, wouldn't your attacker prefer it? I mean, when most attackers see a gun, they know they've lost and they retreat without blood being shed. But if you fight with them, they may think they can take you. And hopefully they aren't right.
Do you think that somebody who has been convicted of domestic abuse should own a gun or should have the right to own a gun?
So this dude stares at her, then mumbles a non-answer, and she feigns tears. How about, why should the relationship status of two people in a violent encounter have anything to do with it? If I punch a stranger, my girlfriend of 6 months, my girlfriend of 6 years, or my wife, why should the courts see this similar violent behavior differently?
I've seen stuff before where like there's like a gun in the house and like a kid will pick it up and they're playing with it and then they shoot each other by mistake. Like, I don't want that to ever happen, you know?
I hate this crap when people talk about child safety. Guns are dangerous, and young children really have no business handling them until they're old enough to learn proper safe handling of guns under strict supervision of a competent adult. But the same can be said about the stairs, or knives, or cleaning products, or taking a bath by themselves. Want kids not to shoot each other? Don't leave your damn gun out in the open, loaded and unlocked. This is not a complex concept. And it doesn't just apply to guns, you hoplophobic weenies.
After a certain age, I think everyone should be introduced to it. Because I mean, look at your fear now. You never were introduced to it. Maybe if you hadn't been introduced to it by the right people, maybe you could still have a fear, but at least you know what it's... I'm gonna get you to shoot a gun one day.
No,
please.
So. Nope.
They had to close on this one because this is the Achilles heel of the anti-gun movement. If somebody is ignorant of guns and you take them shooting and teach them safe, responsible gun handling, they will lose a lot of the fear they have of them. This is why anti-gun forces are losing. More people are taking people with some hesitation about guns shooting. And many of these people turn around and buy guns. And then those people turn around and take more people shooting. But Cosmo has to get all creepy and make it sound like he's trying to pressure her into doing something she doesn't want to do. In real life, my girlfriend, now wife, didn't like guns when I brought my first 1911 home. I told her she could feel how she wanted to about it, but no adult living under my roof was not going to learn safe gun handling. I taught her to shoot, and now have my greatest ally in the gun rights fight, a smart woman who isn't a gun nut, but understands the value of the Second Amendment.
All right, Weird. It was good to talk with you. I'll see you again next week.
Talk to you next week, Sean.
In addition to appearing here, Weird is a regular host on the Squirrel Report and blogs at weirdworld.com. That's WEERD world.com.
Stuff that grinds my gears. That Caucasians t-shirt that Bomani Jones, I hope I'm saying his name right, Bomani Jones. Do you have any idea?
I have no idea what you're even talking about.
You didn't hear about the Caucasians t-shirt that Bomani Jones was wearing on ESPN?
No, because I'm not on Facebook and...
Okay, click on the link and look at this.
I have looked at it.
Everybody else listening to the podcast knows exactly what I'm talking about. Because this shirt is offensive. Offensive.
To white people, right?
Offensive. Let me read the article here from foxsports.com. The shirts have been around since Shelf Life Clothing first started printing them in 2007, highlighting the moral bankruptcy of using a racist caricature of Native Americans as a mascot. They were designed by Trey Kirby, a self-proclaimed lifelong Indians fan, who told Cleveland.com back in 2014 that he even wears the shirt to games. I came up with the shirt to raise a point, but in a disarming way, Kirby said. I didn't mean any spite by it. Regardless, you can always count on the internet to miss the point. Soon after Jones appeared on ESPN, his mentions filled up with people crying race bait and reverse racism. What if a white journalist wore a shirt that said, African Americans? What then? I'm the reasonable one here. You're the racist. And if you look out the passenger side window, you'll see that we've arrived at a teachable moment.
Oh, there it is.
Look, like one of my Facebook friends, Jay, said, I suspect that you couldn't fill a compact car with all of the people who are actually offended by the message of this shirt. It's freaking hilarious. It's not offensive at all. At least not the message. Let me tell you what's actually offensive about this shirt. What's offensive is that when I saw it and I said, oh, I got to get me one of those. And I finally got a really good look at that shirt. It turns out it's just a t-shirt, screen printed. It's not what I first thought it was, a custom-made, full-on professional major league jersey, with the applique work, like the actual Cleveland Indians would wear.
Right.
It's just a screen printed t-shirt. That's what's offensive.
How much is it?
$22.
Yeah.
Plus shipping and handling.
Yeah. Plus you can't really wear it to things other than baseball games with the Cleveland Indians.
No, I could wear it normally. Except I don't wear t-shirts. You know why?
Because you're not allowed to wear t-shirts?
No, because I carry a gun, and I carry a gun concealed, and I could totally conceal a gun under a jersey, but I don't conceal well under a t-shirt.
Good point.
So yeah, it's freaking useless to me. If you guys have never seen it, Google Fighting Whiteys. You do remember this, or were you too young for this?
I am probably too young for that.
Oh my goodness.
I've never heard of that before, but that...
I think it was back in the 90s. I can't remember. I'll put a link in the show notes. There was I think it was in Colorado. I don't remember exactly. But it was this American Indian kid and his buddies. They started like an intramural, I think it was a softball team. I don't know. But it was a team in their college, and it was an intramural team. It wasn't an intercollegiate or anything. It was an intramural team. And they decided that they were going to take a stand against racism and these horrible exploitative mascots, and they were going to be the Fighting Whites. There was this like 50s white dude on their shirt, and it said Fighting Whites, and the catchphrase was, everything's going to be all white. And they thought, this is going to be really offensive. It's going to piss everybody off. And they sold so many t-shirts that they ended up funding a scholarship with it. I am not certain if it was a massive troll or if it was just a really good viral t-shirt marketing campaign. Because it was a totally ineffective troll that backfired, or it was a really good viral t-shirt marketing campaign. It was one of the two.
Who knows? Who can tell?
The shirts are still available at Cafe Press. I'll link to the Wikipedia page in the show notes. So what about you, Adam?
So I was at the range this weekend with Oddball.
Uh-huh.
I've seen Oddball twice in a week, and I haven't seen him before that in like 6 months. It's awesome. So there was this guy.
There always is.
Let me back up. So we went to the TWRA Stones River Hunter Education Center, which is near where Oddball and I live. And it is our local state-funded range, and it's got a 100-yard range and a 50-yard range and a pistol range.
Is that really pretty one that we passed coming in from the highway?
Maybe.
It's on the left-hand side of the road coming in from the road.
Did we go over a giant bridge either right before or right after?
Don't remember, but it was the really nice one. You said there was something weird about it. Like you couldn't do something there, you didn't go there very often, or it was expensive, or...
Oh, well, the reason why I don't go very often is because every time I go, the actual, area that you can shoot out of gets smaller and smaller and smaller. And by that, I mean there's a screen in front of every station with, a wooden frame. So you can only shoot through this very small wooden frame. And like I said, every time it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. This time, they had actually added steel deflectors immediately above where this very small, tiny opening that you can actually stick your gun through is.
So you have to shoot out of a porthole.
You basically, yes, have to shoot out of a porthole. But for rifles, it's, kind of a whatever thing. You can shoot your rifles on the pistol range, and that hole is much bigger, but there's still a hole.
Is there enough of a hole that you can actually see through the hole with your optic?
Yes.
Well, that's nice.
We went to this range, and there was this guy there, speaking of optics, who had, I believe it was a Tikka 338. It was a 338 of some sort. It may have been a Seiko.
And these are both fairly high-quality rifles.
Fairly high-quality rifles. He has a Night Force 24 power scope sitting on top of that.
Okay, and Night Force 24 power scope is
$5,000-$6,000.
Fairly good used car.
Yeah. Or in between them, he had what looked like maybe a 40 or 50 MOA cant mount, which basically means that it points your scope down 50 inches at 100 yards, right? So as opposed to being completely level with the barrel, it's that much. And the reason why you do that is for extreme long range where you're going to run out of adjustment in your scope. I have on my little $700 Remington 700, actually it may have been only $500. I can't remember how much I paid for it. I have a 16 power scope that I paid $300 for, and I have a 20 MOA cant on it. And when I sighted mine in, I sighted it in at 200 yards, and I'm 1.75 inches high at 100 yards because I don't have any more adjustment to go down from that. This guy was trying to sight in his new rifle at 15 yards. That is the tactical facepalm that you're hearing, everyone.
This was a 338?
It was a 338, and he was trying to sight it in at 15 yards.
What was he going to do with a 338 and a 24 power scope at 15 yards? Was he trying to defeat enemy armor?
I don't know. I was very, very, very confused. I was more confused by the range safety officers who were trying to give him tips on how to sight his rifle in at 15 yards.
Sure they weren't just standing there and giving him random noises and then laughing at him?
No, they weren't. I used to go to public ranges, and I would see things like this, and I would try to be helpful and try to give advice. Say, maybe the reason why you're complaining that it's shooting 2.5 feet high at 15 yards is because your gun is not set up to shoot at 15 yards. Your scope isn't broken. He actually said that. I think my scope is broken. Well, it might be now because you've tried to crank it down past the adjustment point. I'm sure Night Force makes better scopes than that, but could be. But yeah, I can't do it anymore because
you can't just not hit him.
Yes.
Because that is a definite case of more dollars than cents.
Yes. I mean, he had 10 grand of gun there. No idea how to use it.
Not a lick of sense.
None whatsoever.
Well, that's our show for the week.
Thanks to Rob Allen for our music.
And Firearms Policy Coalition for their support.
And thank you for listening to the GunBlog VarietyCast.
Constructive criticism can be sent to Sean at SeanSorrentino.com.
And hate mail to WizardPC at GunsCarsTech.com.
If you're not already subscribed, subscribe in iTunes for all you Apple users.
Or in a podcatcher app or Stitcher Radio if you're an Android user.
And make sure to help us grow by sharing this podcast with your friends.
Show notes can be found at gunblogvarietycast.com/episode 86.
This is a URS production.